for downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine. Beth Willard's journey in wine started with a part-time job at Hardy's Cellar operation in Canberra. Since then, she's lived in France, the United Kingdom and Spain, where she's made her home. In her time, she's been a top buyer as well as a show judge and journalist. A speaker of 4 languages, Beth loves travel, foreign cultures, and of course wine, bringing passion, knowledge, and a sense of humour to everything she does. Hello, Beth, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tim.
Nice to hear your voice. Are you in Madrid, steaming away?
No, thankfully I've escaped Madrid for a couple of days. I'm actually in San Sebastian, where it's a little bit cooler. So last night, out and about, having a few chacolis, it was refreshingly cool compared to Madrid.
Yeah, I just got back from Galicia, 10 days there, and I felt the same thing. It's nice to be close to the Atlantic. Well, Bay of Biscay, I suppose, where you are. That's kind of...
Yeah, it's that sea breeze. It was humid, but it's. I mean, the temperature difference was, over 10 degrees different. It was just... perfect.
You're an Aussie, though, aren't you? Used to the heat?
Yeah, but it's hard. I always try and explain to people it's a different sort of heat. I try to explain to my family it's with the different hours of sunshine as well. It's still really sunny and bright late at night, and so you come out of a restaurant at like 1 a.m. and it's still 35 degrees, and so you don't get that drop in temperatures in Madrid that you do nearly everywhere else, I would suggest.
Canberra is kind of known as a centre of government, but wine, was there wine there when you were growing up?
Yeah, so yes, there is wine there. Canberra kind of gets a lot of bad press as the city of public servants and the government, and people think it's a bit boring. But along with all of that comes a lot of exciting cultural events. All the embassies are there. The best university in Australia is in Canberra, which is where I went, so I'm a bit prejudiced, but it's a great university. So there's a lot of cultural activity, but there is a wine scene, and people like Clonakilla, they were the pioneers of the region along with a few other sort of more famous names. And now there's, every time there are better wines coming out of the region. So there's bits and pieces happening.
And was wine part of your life as a kid? Were your parents wine drinkers?
Yeah, so mum and dad do drink wine. They like their wine. They drink wine every day. They drank wine when I was younger, but they weren't in the industry at all. They were both teachers. But when I was younger, we used to drive from Sydney to Melbourne quite regularly, at least once a year, to go and visit relatives, and we'd go in the car, and it's a long way. So we'd always stop somewhere, and it was usually around sort of Rutherglen, with all the wonderful fortifieds. It was a good place to stop. And so we'd go and visit lots of wineries. And when I was probably 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, it was really quite boring and dull being dragged around these wineries. But I think there's something that stays with you, whether it's the smells or there's a buzz. And I think that was probably my first kind of pull towards the wine industry.
Interesting, yeah. You come from this very academic background. Both your parents are teachers. I don't want to labour the point too much, but it sounds a little abnormal for Australia, maybe, to be that academic. I don't know. Is that unfair on Australians? Sorry to insult you, but...
I'll start with something super offensive. No, look, I think it's fair enough. People know a lot about Australia for its landscape. It's, famous actors as well, and sport, but maybe the focus isn't on academia as much. But obviously we have a strong academic tradition. And yeah, my parents were both teachers. They didn't come from strong academic backgrounds at all, but they were both really interested in the world around them and languages. And they had the opportunity to go to university when it was made available to everybody. So they really benefited from those strong Labour Party principles at the time. Yeah. And so, that mum was a Latin and ancient Greek teacher, which is probably even more rare in the Australian context, and dad's French and German before he went on to work more in the administrative side of education. So I was surrounded by books.
Yeah, and languages, right? Is that what got you interested in languages? Basically, that they were speaking them. Well, I don't know if your mum was speaking ancient Greek and Latin, but possibly.
She's not that. She's weird, but she's not that weird. No, I was surrounded by books about languages, and I remember one summer because this is how weird I am. I probably shouldn't reveal this to people, but I saw Mum's ancient Greek books, and I thought I'll just teach myself the alphabet because that would be fun. a fun way to kill a summer afternoon. This probably won't come as any surprise to you, Tim, but because you know me, but I can be quite stubborn. And I didn't want my parents to help me at all. But so I really did study everything on my own. But the fact is that they were encouraging, supportive of anything that me and my sister wanted to do. And we were surrounded by all of these wonderful books, and they're still avid readers and watch a lot of films. So it was being in that sort of cultural space that really got me in.
And you were very sporty. You were a pretty good cricketer, weren't you?
Yeah,
still be, I don't know.
Well, if my knees could stand up to it, I was a wicket keeper. So at the moment, I've got a really bad knee, and it won't really support any wicket keeping activity on a long term basis. But no, I did. I played for my state, and I coached and I umpired and I scored. It was basically all consuming for a period of my life. And to be honest, it now kind of is too, because I'm always watching a cricket match.
I know that from whenever I'm ever travelling with you. You're always watching the cricket at 3:00 in the morning or something. But, and the languages, I mean, what do you speak? 4? I mean, you speak obviously French, you speak Russian, you speak Spanish and English, as we can hear. Anything else you can get by in?
Yeah, so I mean, I can get by in bits and pieces. I obviously can deal with Italian and a bit of German and Romanian from the connection with the Romance languages, and Russian helps me in Eastern Europe as well. I can understand a lot of languages like Serbian, Croatian to a certain level, particularly if we're talking about wine. I can kind of follow the conversation. Yeah.
And the interest obviously came from your parents, although, as you said, you're quite independent. I just wonder what makes a good linguist. I mean, I always think it's a musical gift in some senses. I mean, I'm not a great musician, but I think I've got a good ear and I've got a good voice. And I think maybe that's part of the gift of speaking languages, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you are really musical and you do have a good voice. I don't, but I did play the clarinet and I loved studying music. And I think languages pull people in from different specialities and fields. I think people with a strong mathematical brain really take to languages. I love grammar, for instance, and so the grammatical structures really appeal to me, and that's sort of a more mathematical approach. But I guess people who like people as well, they're drawn to languages because it's just something completely different to communicate with somebody in their own language. Yeah. And I think as well, people interested in history and culture, and that's the beauty of languages. I think the key to it is to work. Really, you know, I get a bit frustrated with these Duolingo things. I think it's fun to learn vocab and it keeps people engaged, but there's no way of learning a language without actually putting in the hard work.
Yeah. I mean, I think the grammatical structure is important, and it's quite difficult in French and Spanish. I've no idea about Russian because I don't speak it, but you know, what makes you a good linguist? It really, in a way, is the command of idiom, I think, don't you think, and of everyday language, not just of the kind of classical forms of Spanish or French or Russian, presumably.
I think so. I think the grammar's really, for me, grammar's beautiful because you can manipulate it to express things in a really different way in each language, and that reflects sort of the mentality of different people and the way that they think differently. And I think there's an underlying beauty to that. But you're right. It's when you suddenly say something and you think, wow, I don't know where that came from. It makes no grammatical sense, but everybody here knows that's how you say that thing. Exactly. And I always get a little bit of excitement when I say something for the first time.
And you think, yes.
Nailed that.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to wine. So your first job in wine was Cellar, Hardy's Cellar operation in Canberra. I didn't even know Hardy's had a Cellar operation in Canberra, but yeah. I mean, you know, surprised me. What was it doing?
Yeah. I think it's closed now, but it was quite successful at the time. They had their own operation with vineyards in Canberra and made Riesling, Shiraz, sort of the more typical varieties of the Canberra district. But interesting fact is when I was working there in the Cellar, they actually were processing the fruit for the Eileen Hardy Chardonnay. So the top cuvées from the Hardy's portfolio. And I love the reasoning behind it. It's quite amusing for me because it's very Australian reasoning. The fruit actually came from Tumbarumba. Tumbarumba is a weird place.
Great name, Tumbarumba.
It's a great name. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's one of those like Kevin Bacon scenarios. Everybody knows somebody from Tumbarumba, even though there's about 10 people who live there. But for Canberra, it's down the road. But I think if I remember, it's about a 4-hour drive. I might be wrong on that, but it's a long distance. Yeah. So the Canberra winery was the closest to Tumbarumba, and so the Eileen Hardy Chardonnay came from there, and it was processed in our winery. Yeah. But I put the hard yards in the Cellar.
Yeah, and you learnt a lot from that, didn't you? I think just dealing with the general public.
Exactly, and we were running events and dealing with a restaurant as well at the time. So there's that whole sort of interplay with wine and food. But there's no better way of learning about wine, I think, than being on the. I guess that's why a lot of people work in places like Majestic in the UK. But being at the Cellar door and learning how to speak about wine to the average person who comes in to taste and to buy wine, there's no better experience, really. And it taught me a lot. And I think it's something that I think you share this as well. When we talk about wine, we're always thinking about the consumer as well. It's why we look for value wines. They're not just the really expensive wines that we rate, but the wines that everybody's going to be drinking every day.
Let's do a quick detour to Russia. How did you end up there?
That's a hell of a detour, Tim.
Yeah, exactly. Did you like that? Was that a good segue?
Yeah, really good
from
segue.
Canberra to Russia?
Canberra to Russia. Well, it did start because of Canberra. When I was finishing high school in Canberra, there was a teacher at my school who had a unique fascination with Russia and actually set up sort of, it was only a short trip, but it was an exchange with Russian schools. And so there were some Russians that came to Australia and we went on a school trip, and I still don't know how my parents let me go. They'd let my sister go as well on the same trip a few years later. I was 15. I think it must have been 15. And they sent me off with a school group to go and stay with families in St. Petersburg and Moscow. We travelled around. We went to Estonia. They took a bit of
a treat. That's amazing.
It was amazing. And so that was really my first pull towards Russia. But then I watched a lot of films. Like, I was a real film buff at finishing school and at university. I would go and watch like 3 films a day if there was a festival on. And I loved Russian cinema. I loved Russian literature. And when I went to ANU, the Australian National University, weirdly, they had one of the best professors in Russian studies in the world. And so it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, you always say what an amazing place it is. I mean, it's got particularly bad press at the moment, but that's not the fault of the population. It's just the people leading the country, isn't it, really?
Well, yeah, I mean, and throughout its history, it's been a complicated place, but complicated is interesting, no?
Yeah.
Like, simple's a bit boring. And
the
rich literature and cultural traditions, the art galleries, it's amazing. And somewhere that's so complicated and difficult, I think, always has that draw. No, you want to find out more.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Right, okay, we're going to get on our plane again now. We're leaving Russia. We're going to Europe because your next stop was Bordeaux. Why there? Because you got a job at the Syndicat des Vins de Bordeaux. What were you doing there?
Yeah, well, actually, a few years earlier, I'd been in Bordeaux teaching English it's a lot in the news at the moment because I was teaching in La Teste de Bûche, which is right next door to Arcachon, obviously in the news at the moment for all the horrible fires. Yeah. But I taught English there when I was kind of between my master's and working out what the next step would be. So I have to apologise to a particular set of school children in that region who all ended up with a very strong Australian accent when they learned English. It was terrible to hear it back when I heard it coming back at me. But then I went back and I'd studied I'd done some studies in wine back in Australia in between, and I wanted to go back to Bordeaux and really sort of immerse myself in the wine culture there. And I worked, for the Syndicat de Bordeaux Supérieur.
And that was your kind of first, exposure to fine European wine, was it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I dabbled in bits and pieces in Australia, tasting whatever I could, but really that was my first time. And ironically, most of my job was actually selling Bordeaux wines to the Bordelais, like the locals who would come into the visitor centre. And then I actually ran a bit of an offshoot up at Les Hangars, up the north of Bordeaux. They did a pop-up type thing, and I was managing it and selling to the locals coming in. So it was a fun experience.
That's a good way to learn French. So it's that thing where you're connected with the consumer again, right?
Exactly. And that's something that's never really left me throughout my career so far.
Yeah. And your next move really was into buying, wasn't it? I mean, you went to Alliance Wines and then you went to Direct Wines, which some people may know as Bordeaux Direct or the Sunny Times Wine Club. It's all the same group, isn't it?
Yes.
Just tell us what took you into buying.
To be honest, it was more by chance, really. No, I kind of had an idea that I wanted to be on that producer side. I wanted to be out traveling, but I was still quite fresh to it when I came to the UK. I would have loved to have stayed in France, but I had to move on for visa reasons. And so when I came to the UK, it was purely by chance that I sort of landed in that role, which kind of corresponded to all of the things I was looking for, that sort of excitement, being out on the ground and dealing with producers and using the languages.
And what did you start buying at Alliance, first of all, then? Which countries?
So at Alliance, actually, one of the very first things was Spain, and that's why that really has been such a fundamental part of what I do ever since. But it was Spain, more or less.
And what about direct wines? Buying the whole world then, by then, were you?
Oh, gosh, it felt like at one point I was dealing with a lot. But no, Spain as well was absolutely by far and away the biggest part of my portfolio. But I've been really lucky. I mean, I bought South America as well for direct wines, and the Languedoc-Roussillon and Eastern Europe, and South Africa. So it was great, yeah.
So you've had exposure to the whole world pretty much, haven't you?
Yeah, I've never been to the Rhone.
Oh, really?
Everybody has like one region, and for me, I've still never been to the Rhone, and I'm very embarrassed when I speak to Rhone specialists. I have to apologise.
We should go. And I've never been to Croatia. I'd like to go to Croatia.
All right, we'll do a swap.
Japan is on my bucket list as well. I've got to go there as well. What makes a good buyer, do you think? I mean, I suppose part of the question is, did you ever end up buying like punter wines that weren't necessarily to your taste? I mean, is that kind of part of being a good buyer? You have to understand what the consumer wants, not just what Beth Willard wants to drink.
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. That was I would have said like it was 99% of the job. I mean, it's really quite easy. I mean, sorry if there are buyers listening to this, I don't want to undermine all of their jobs, but it's really quite easy to manage portfolios of wineries with a strong reputation that already have a really strong customer base, fine wine. Everybody knows they're great wines. It's a lot harder to go out there and buy wines that will sell at a competitive price, which actually are good, offer some typicity, whether it's from the region or variety. And I used to spend a lot more time working on those wines where the volume would be huge, where I knew that they'd be on the supermarket shelves or, throughout restaurants throughout the country. I'd spend loads more time putting together those blends. They're not necessarily wines that I want to drink at home, but I always made sure that they were the best quality that I could absolutely get my hands on. But I think it's kind of what we do now, Tim, as well. Like there are wines that I score really well that aren't necessarily my go-to style for me personally that I drink at home, but they're excellent wines. And so you have to put your own preferences to the back of your mind to a certain...
Yeah, I think you want a bit of your own preferences. So if people taste a wine you've recommended, they say, okay, I understand what that person's palate's like. And I think one of the things I like about you is that, many things I like about you is that we have quite similar views on what good wine tastes like. But I think your point is true. That, we can still taste something else that may not be to our taste and think, okay, well, that's well made. And
exactly. Exactly. And look, I always use my parents as a bit of a touchstone really when I'm tasting wine. I particularly when I was buying wine, I think, look, would I be happy to buy this for my parents? Because, they don't buy expensive wine every night. Who has that kind of budget? But they like to drink good wine. And so I always sort of have them in the back of my mind.
Sounds good. And what about the move into journalism? I mean, was that almost second nature to you, being quite academic in outlook and, you're an extrovert, you're interested in people, which I think is one of the things you need to be a journalist. And you tell me.
Well, I think it helped. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day and I actually remembered that when I was at uni, I bought a book on copywriting and how to make pitches about, and pitch things to newspapers, magazines. So I must have been thinking about it in the back of my mind then. And I loved writing. I loved writing at university. And even particularly when I was at Laithwaite's Direct Wines, a lot of my job was selling the concept of the wines that I'd found on buying trips back into the marketing team or the merchandising team to make sure we could find a place for them in the range. So I did a lot of writing and pitching and I did a lot of copy for the newsletters as well. So it was, for me, it was a natural kind of progression. I wanted to write, but also I just wanted to have a bit more freedom to cover basically anything I wanted.
Yeah, well, that's the nice thing is the freedom of the open road in a sense. I was going to ask you, what do you like and dislike most about being a wine writer? I think I know what you're going to say, but what are the good bits and what are the slightly harder bits?
The good bits is just, as we said, they're the freedom. Working with good people. I love working with you. I work with other good people as well. And I think having that freedom, you can kind of choose to work with good people as much as possible. It's also being around the producers and being out on the road in the vineyards. I mean, that's what we get excited by is listening to them talk about their wines and And, as my dad always says, he follows me on Instagram and he says, do you go to any ugly places? And I said, well, yes, but I don't post them on Instagram. But we are very fortunate that we get to go to amazing places where wine is sort of really central to the culture.
Yeah.
The bad thing is, oh gosh, we work hard trying to make a living out of this. There aren't enough hours in the day. But
sometimes when you've got to write 75 tasting notes today,
It's that, how many tasting notes can I do before I lose the will?
I agree. I think that's the hard thing. But I think it's important to remember that the people reading the tasting notes, and it's usually, it's often the producer, they're only reading their tasting notes. So I always do my best to write as good a tasting note as I can for every wine. I mean, I don't always succeed, but I do my best. And I think you're the same, that we want to put information in there that will help the consumer to make a decision. But also, the producer will recognise their wine in there.
Absolutely. And I think that there are too many tasting notes out there which just list a whole lot of adjectives about fruit. I'm like, look, that's not really my forte. I'm not really strong on that. But I try to always give some sort of information about the winemaking or the viticulture. And also I like to put something in there about how it makes me feel, because that's how we drink wine. I was really excited by this wine. This is, it's I don't know, it's something different, unique, just something to convey that excitement to the consumer.
Yeah, well, you're saying how much better can it get than this, or something like that.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, you've talked about this a bit, but, are there similarities between buying wine and journalism? I mean, are we doing similar jobs? I mean, one person's obviously putting their money on the table and we're not doing that. But are the questions you ask as a buyer the same as the questions you'd ask as a journo, apart from price, obviously?
Well, I was just going to say that it's wonderful not to talk about price so much. But then again, I think that the price is a really important part of the context of each wine. Like I really do consider price when I'm tasting the wine. I think we can't leave that to one side, in my opinion, because it's how people at the end of the day buy it. But yeah, I guess that probably it's quite similar. I think one of the interesting things is that in both roles, at the end of the day, it's your reputation on the line. So if I bought a massive volume of wine that was going out in a huge campaign for Laithwaites, maybe the front cover of the monthly magazine, and it bombed, well, I would take that quite personally, because it was something that I believed in and I pitched. I think it's the same way that if you and I are tasting a wine and we score it really well, you're kind of waiting for other people to then taste it to say, yeah, no, that's a really great wine.
Yeah,
and then you sort of breathe a sigh of relief. Yeah. Yeah,
and I get a bit of a buzz from that. If somebody says, oh, I tasted the thing you rated and I would taste it or drank it, even better. I really rate it. Someone spent their own money on it.
And particularly when it's a new wine, that's even more exciting. You're the first person to rate it, and suddenly people are going out there buying it because of that rating, and it helps the producer.
Yeah, and I think it must be very boring just buying classic wines where, you just buy Chateau Lafite every year, or you buy, Chateau Brayas every year. I mean, I'm not saying they're not great wines. They are, but it's more fun to discover stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely. For me, it's all about the discovery.
Yeah. You first became interested in Spain at Alliance, basically. Yeah? And was there a kind of eureka moment where you thought, oh, this place is really interesting?
Yeah, there was. And it was here in San Sebastian, but it was before I was working in the UK. When I was living in Bordeaux, I drove down to San Sebastian for the weekend, and it was my first time in Spain. And I didn't speak any Spanish. I got by with French in the bars here at that time. A lot of people still spoke French in the bars. And I remember somebody pouring a Chacoli for me. And people ask me, was there like one great wine? I think they're expecting me to say, I don't know, a Vega Sicilia or, one of the big names. And I say, no, it was Chacoli. Just, I don't know what brand it was. I have no idea who made it. But it was just that whole sort of atmosphere in the bars with the pinchos and the wine. Yeah. And I thought, oh, there's something here that I could really, that suits me in terms of the culture. And so that was really the eureka moment, if you like.
And living there has presumably kind of increased your interest and your love of the country, hasn't it? Most of the time.
Don't ask me about having to convert my driver's license over, because that's a whole other story I'm trying to deal with at the moment. But every country has its bureaucracy. But no, I mean, I love it here. And it was a move I wanted to make for a long time. It took me a while, again, because of paperwork. But I'm just so happy to be here. It's a different way of life. And I think that if you fully embrace the when people eat lunch and how people manage their day, you get into that rhythm, and it's just a wonderful kind of feeling of being in the inside.
I mean, we obviously both love Spanish wine, but I just wondered how the image has changed in the time that you've been involved with it, back to the time of Alliance Wine and doing what you're doing now, which is obviously much more involved with tasting and writing. And does it still have a way to go? I mean, you know, we love it, but does the market get how fine and what great value Spain offers?
I don't think so. I think it's something that you and I talk about quite a lot, is still that missing piece of, you know, a lot of markets don't understand what's, I guess they see the tip of the iceberg, but we kind of see what's underneath here on the ground in Spain, and there's still so much that can be done. And I think it's more a communication marketing piece. But I've seen huge changes. One of the first people who kind of helped me out professionally in Spanish wine, a very, very dear friend who, it's very sad he's no longer with us, but he and I would travel around together, and we'd go to some truly horrific places in, I won't say which region of Spain, but let's just say España Profunda, like really, really deep Spain. And some of the wines were so bad and faulty that he would start a conversation in front of the winemaker, and he'd say, "Oh, what I really like about this wine is, Beth, what do you like about it?" And then I'd have to finish it and
to wind you up.
To wind me up. And I'd be like, I like the colour. So it's a lovely colour. So I remember, you know, we had these horrible experiences with really faulty wines, but honestly now, I mean, as a baseline, I wouldn't expect to find a faulty wine anywhere.
No, it's very rare, isn't it? Yeah.
Really rare. And so there's great winemaking. Everything's, you know, very modern, fresh in general. And then you get these extraordinary expressions of terroir where people are going back, doing interesting things, recuperating the indigenous varieties. I mean, you know, but it's, for me, it's still the most exciting place to be.
And which regions excite you most? I mean, I hope you're going to say the ones you write about, but you can choose some of mine too.
I list all the reports that I do for you, Tim. That might be a good place to start. But Rioja, obviously. I've always said the two extremes of the country, Rioja and Jerez, but they're the sort of classics. But you know, they do kind of reflect some of the work I do for you with Navarra. I love Navarra. It was one of the first regions I fell in love with. For a region that's so small, I can't believe the diversity. I love Castilla y León. I love that sense of driving out into endless space and on the meseta, with the Castilian mentality, which is so different from, say, the Galician mentality or the, you know, Catalan mentality.
See on the horizon is maybe a castle and a flock of sheep, right?
Probably a flock of sheep. Yeah, there's a lot of sheep. I mean, I just really love traveling all around the country.
Tell us about the book you're writing, because you're writing a book about the culture of Spain seen through gastronomy and wine. I'm looking forward to reading that. Sounds great.
So it's not really a book for wine purists. It's more for people with an interest, a general interest in travel, in culture, and particularly in gastronomy. But obviously wine is going to be a huge, huge part of that. And what I've tried to do is come up with some routes around Spain which kind of reflect either ancient trading routes or some sort of cultural connection, rather than just writing about, you know, this is Extremadura, this is Catalonia. I want it to be like a journey around Spain, and it's really to give a modern, to present the modern face of Spanish gastronomy. So there'll be interviews with up-and-coming chefs, a focus on some of the wonderful produce. So not just paella, but, you know, like the jamón de Teruel or the salt from Cardiff. And then obviously I'll work in some wonderful stories from wine in that too. So it's to take people on a journey around Spain, and hopefully they'll sit more sort of with the travel gastronomy kind of section of books. So it will appeal to a broad audience.
And you've got to get in percebes from Rías Baixas, I think.
Gosh, the most dangerous
rock barnacles. It's the most dangerous job in the world, apart from being a hail pilot, I think, and seeding clouds.
Know how to do it. It's crazy.
With silver nitrate.
Oh my goodness!
They're clinging onto rocks. Anybody listening to the podcast, if you've never seen somebody harvesting percebes, these rock barnacles, it's quite a deal, isn't it?
It's terrifying, and it really gives you a true appreciation of the work when you eat them. It's crazy.
And tell us about the new Europe wine guide. I mean, why new? What's new about it?
Yeah, well, it's sort of a bit of a play on concepts, I guess you could say. Is, you know, a lot of people consider Eastern Europe in wine terms as New Europe, which actually some people there get very frustrated by, because the tradition and the history of winemaking in those countries is very old, and there's extraordinary.
So you're being ironic, really.
Sort of being ironic, yeah, exactly. But also it's a new guide to that part of Europe. So really I'm trying to look at countries from Central and Eastern Europe. And there are some people who already write in that space who produce wonderful work. But this is really looking at the nuts and bolts, like looking at the current wines in the market, trying to guide people, if they're interested in Serbian wine, well, what producers who are the producers that they should go to? So I'm actually tasting the current releases and rating them and providing tasting notes.
So what is it? Bulgaria, Romania? Is that in there?
So far I've covered Istria in Croatia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Slovenia's coming out very shortly, and then Moldova looks like it might be the next one on the horizon. So I'm excited to go back to Moldova, and I'm going back in September actually for a short trip, which will be great.
And the Russian comes in handy in some of those Eastern European countries, and they still speak it, don't they?
I'm pretty careful actually about how I use that, just
especially
because
now.
Obviously current political climate is not necessarily appreciated, but it does help me just be able to communicate. But also what I studied, it was very much sort of the general politics of that part of Europe, and so I do have sort of a cultural and political historical appreciation of the region.
Yeah, which I think is very useful, isn't it?
Well, it's so useful. It's a completely different part of Europe. It's not like being in France or in Spain. They do things differently, and they have their own traditions, and it's an incredibly rich, interesting part of the world.
Mm. Let's talk about Portugal, because, and I declare an interest here because you wrote this report for my site, and it's fantastic. It was your first ever Portuguese report. Was it kind of a revelation? I got the sense talking to you, you thought, wow, why haven't I known about this before?
Well, yeah, it was a bit, because I've tasted Portuguese wine for years, and I at one point I was buying Portugal too when I was still working as a buyer. I've been to Portugal, but when you really get under the skin of it, there are some extraordinary things happening, and I was just so excited by the dynamism, the enthusiasm of the producers, and really huge shift to focus much more on the vineyard than sort of more made wine styles. And I guess the most difficult thing was my computer constantly trying to autocorrect the spellings of the Portuguese varieties, which I was struggling with enough anyway.
Alvarinho with an NHO, yeah.
Those ones, it kept trying to push me back to Spanish. But it was also, getting used to the Portuguese pronunciation. It was great. Obviously, with my Spanish, I can understand Portuguese, so it was really great to listen to the producers who, talk about their wines in their language and the passion. So I just think there's so much exciting stuff going on amongst the growers and the winemakers. I think the next few years it's going to be extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Spain and Portugal have a few things in common. I mean, great varieties. I mean, if you're up in the northern part of Portugal, in the Minho, and obviously on the other side is Galicia, the great varieties pretty much just cross the river on the either side. And, Tempranillo is the same thing as Aragonés, but they're very different countries as well, aren't they? I mean, not just, politically, but in winemaking terms, Portugal's got its own set of varieties, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many varieties. I was struggling to get my head around some of them at points. It's really interesting. I think that there are quite some big differences, and I hope I'm going to explain this in a way that people understand. But in some ways, Portugal feels a lot more new, and I guess what I mean by that is some of the things going on in the vineyards and in the wineries. They're really very recent developments. Even though Portugal is obviously, again, an ancient winemaker, has a very old winemaking tradition, it just feels like, maybe coming out of the 70s, 80s with the political changes, maybe things took a bit longer to come to fruition. Whereas in Spain, there's a sense now, I think, that after the last 10, 20 years of development, that things are sort of more
settled.
I don't want to say developed, because developed might give the wrong impression, but it just feels like Spain kind of knows where it's at. Whereas Portugal, there's an excitement coming through where I still don't think that they see where the potential might be. It's a really exciting moment.
You're a co-chair of the Decanter World Wine Awards, and I can mention this now because I'm no longer involved with the International Wine Challenge. I know it's a demanding gig running these things. They're tiring, aren't they? I just wonder, how does a wine competition stand out these days? And there's so many of them, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. I think that there are. There are
Too
a lot
many?
of wine competitions. Quite possibly. I think it's hard. Look, I think that the important thing about competitions like Decanter and the other maybe UK-based ones, or the important competitions in the US, is that they have an international standing. And so maybe they're not so important for the consumer. I don't know. But I think for the trade, it is important because these medals still do open doors for the producers. It's really hard for producers to find importers and seek out to be able to have those conversations with buyers. But if they've got a reason to write to them, or if the buyers see that producers won a whole stack of great medals at a competition, it does help. It opens doors. But there is something about the reputation of some of the more established competitions that definitely, I think, puts them ahead of others. And I think Decanter is one of those, particularly with the reach of the magazine. I think having the magazine to back up the competition really is something that very few other competitions can offer.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, all these competitions are tasted blind. I just mean, what makes a good blind taster? Any tips you'd like to pass on? Because you're pretty good at it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a difference too that's important to point out, that there's some people who are really great at blind guessing, I guess, if you like, if you're playing that game of trying to work out what the wine is and you're tasting it blind. I think that's a very different skill. But I think tasting a wine blind in the context of a competition or an assessment, that's a whole different thing, because you're looking for quality. I think the main thing for me is to leave a lot of expectations behind. So I guess, no, not expectations. Don't try to second guess. I've seen a lot of people tasting blind in competitions who say, oh, well, this must have gone through malolactic. It must have spent 6 months, and they're kind of guessing the winemaking rather than just looking at what's in the glass in front of them. I think the other thing that's really important too is not to look for all the faults in the wine. I mean, at the end of the day, we drink wine to enjoy it. So I always start from a basis of, what do I really like about this wine? Like what gets me excited about it? And sometimes it's difficult to define. Sometimes the best wines, it's really hard to put into words what I like about it. You just know.
Those are the best ones. Those are the best
They are the best wines because it's an emotional connection.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever judged wine competitions in Australia. It may be the same in New Zealand, I don't know. But certainly Australia, everybody starts out looking for faults. And it's often winemakers who want to show, hey, I know this fault better than you do, and nobody's ever saying, it's rare that you get people saying, God, this wine is amazing.
Yeah. And I find that really hard because I just start from a pure love of wine and enthusiasm. So I'm always starting it with the most positive things. And then obviously I can apply a critical mind and I can use my knowledge and my experience. But I really hate just, finding all the tiny, tiny faults in a wine, because sometimes those faults, like we're all human beings, we have faults, but it's what makes us interesting sometimes.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's sort of series that they're not quite faults, but they're idiosyncrasies, I suppose you could say. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And the final question, and I always ask people this question, is how do you get away from wine? You haven't got much free time, have you?
I have no free time, and I go away and I still manage to get drawn into wine. I did, what I did once? I actually went on a holiday by myself for a few days up to Tromsø in Norway. So I think if you go really, really far north where there's a lot of snow and there aren't any vineyards, it's probably about the best chance that you've got.
With no Wi-Fi, do you think?
No Wi-Fi. I went out to look at the northern lights in the middle of a forest in the snow. You can't get further away.
That sounds ideal. But you're a great reader, and also, you still watch the cricket, don't you? I've seen you watching it in the middle of the night.
I've also watched it in the middle of tastings, but don't tell anybody. Yes, I'm always watching it. I can find a cricket match anywhere if I need to watch something while I'm writing about wine.
So it's basically cricket, reading, but then doing what you do, which is eating, travelling, drinking good wine, tasting good wine.
Eating, drinking, tasting. I'm professional, Tim.
Yeah, exactly. Tasting, not drinking. Brilliant. Anyway, Beth, lovely to talk to you. See you very soon.
Thank you.
I love the idea that wine is all about the discovery. And imagine learning the Greek alphabet in an afternoon. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is the great geneticist, Dr. Jose Vuyamov. Join me then. Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter @TimAtkin and on Instagram @TimAtkinMW. See you next week.